Meanwhile, at the Legion of Nerd. Hello, Internet. Welcome to the Legion of Nerd Inner Circle. There's a thing coming out soon. Civil. Captain.
Civil War?
Civil War. Captain America Civil War.
With Ulysses Grant?
The whole point of Civil War is obviously to talk about the registration of superhumans, having the information public to the people.
Right.
So I thought in lieu of that, we should talk about the dirty secrets of the Avengers. Because each of them are dirty people that have terrible secrets. They have terrible secrets that should be made public. First, we're going to talk about Hawkeye.
What does Hawkeye have?
Other than being the least interesting Avenger, Hawkeye is a war criminal. Like a super war criminal.
Elaborate. How's he a war criminal?
When you see Hawkeye in Avengers, we start with Loki and his Loki Pokey Stick, which, as we find out later, is a mind gem or whatever. There's a whole convoluted thing we'll never find out. He touches the center of your chest, and as Selvig puts it, it's more than knowledge, it's truth, which can be interpreted to say that it brings what you want most and the thing that will lead to what you want most to light.
Huh.
And for Selvig,
immediately starts killing people.
Well, for Selvig, you see that obviously it gives him knowledge about how to open the
Right.
Tesseract and how to open up a wormhole and find out everything about the Tesseract and everything that you need for information about that. It also makes him insane later on in Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah, running around naked with pills.
We've all done that.
I do that every weekend.
Hawkeye, on the other hand, and Loki even asks, what did it show you, Bolton? And Hawkeye's like, my next target.
Yeah.
Because that's what he does. He's a target killer. He's an assassin. And he assassinates people in a very gruesome way.
Oh, yeah. Ripping out eyeballs and...
Not even ripping out eyeballs. It would have been one thing to, kidnap someone and, bring them over and, have them scan their eyeball and then kill them. In the middle of, a huge gala, he has Loki flip a guy over, viciously scan his eye out of his socket, and then display it to him across, a vast distance with some kind of crazy new technology that seems specific for transporting eyes.
Yeah.
That's a weird special skill set to have, a technology
it's a very
around.
special skill set.
Well, it's a weird thing to, build technology around it, which makes me think that Hawkeye developed that based on what he sees from Loki Pokestick.
Maybe, yeah.
That, that's what he just, now that he has, Loki vision.
Yeah.
He's
also... There's a couple deleted scenes in that Avengers movie with Hawkeye and Loki.
And when you see Loki Pokestick again in Age of Ultron with Dr. Cho, she has the same, she's a scientist, she has science things.
Yeah.
So she knows how to make, a person now.
Yeah.
Out of adamantium. A superhuman. So obviously it doesn't naturally... Obviously, it doesn't naturally make you into a killer or necessarily make you a slave to that person. It just
amplifies what you are.
Yeah, it's the alcohol.
Like the super soldier serum.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of super soldier serum. Except it doesn't make you super or soldier. It kind of makes you a soldier, I guess. You're kind of enslaved to the person.
And that goes hand in hand with the comics. He always had a shady past. He was part of a criminal organization before he joined Shield and.
Right.
Killing people and that sort
Criminal Circus, something like that?
Yeah, I think it was called I'm drawing a blank now. Circus of Crime. I think that's what it was called. Sure. Something like that.
It's an alliteration.
Yeah.
That sounds like Marvel.
That sounds like Stan the Man. Who do we have next?
Next up, Black Widow, who is secretly, the best Avenger, I think. There's a lot of subtle hints that proves this. One of which is, obviously in Age of Ultron, when they say, oh, we're all going to try to pick up the hammer. She specifically says, no, I don't need... that question answered. The reason why is because she knows that she will lift the hammer. She's actually a really good person. All she wants to do in Avengers is help Barton, her best friend. All she wants to do in Winter Soldier is protect people from the Winter Soldier. There's that scene where she's being chased down by the Winter Soldier. The civilians around her make good cover fire. That's just strategic value of people running around. Is he probably won't shoot if there are other people there that aren't his target, except I guess Winter Soldier will anyway. And she knows that. She knows that they'll shoot through those people to shoot her, so she tells them all to run away.
Yeah. Interesting.
Then in Age of Ultron again, when we see her past, she knows that her whole motivation thing is around kids. She meets Barton's kids, and they're good people.
Right,
She's a good aunt to them. So yeah, pretty much everything about... and I think the reason why she doesn't want to lift the hammer is because she knows that if she does lift the hammer, it's going to screw up her whole worldview. Because again, in Age of Ultron... which has a surprising amount of character developments, given that it's really quick through the character development. She talks about how she's an assassin. That's all she is. That's all she can be. She can't be a parental figure. And the reason why she doesn't want to pick up the hammer is because she knows that will like shatter her worldview. She can no longer be this ruthless assassin if she knows that Thor's hammer thinks that she's worthy.
Interesting.
Thoughts?
My thoughts. No, that's really good. She's like amazing. Like I've always liked Black Widow.
Give her solo film.
Not just because she's Scarlett Johansson and reasons, but no, yeah, she's an amazing character, and that actually makes a lot of sense.
Give her solo film.
Yes, that'd be amazing.
Next up, Bruce Banner.
Oh yeah, he's like immortal.
Bruce Banner is an immortal man. He there's a bit in Avengers where he says like I put a bullet in my mouth and the other guy spat it out.
That's actually the lead scene from the Hulk movie. He does that. They show him shooting himself, and then he turns green and spits the bullet out.
Right, but the thing is, he's not green while he's shooting
it.
Right,
he's a normal. Then he turns green.
Yeah, he's a normal
it's like
person.
The bullet just pissed him off.
Which, unless he can turn Hulk like faster than a speeding bullet,
right?
He as Bruce Banner can't die.
Right, which is interesting.
Which also fits into the other thing with Incredible Hulk, where he falls out of a helicopter, smashes into the ground,
and then turns into the Hulk.
And then he's fine. He's Bruce Banner the entire time he's crashes into the ground. So his cells are also indestructible.
Right, which I'd also like to point out too. Going back to the Incredible Hulk movie, we see how the radiation, the gamma rays affect when the other guy, I forget, not the other guys in the Hulk, the guy who becomes the Abomination.
Right.
Before he turns into the Abomination, he just looks like a human, but he's like a super soldier. He gets smashed by the Hulk.
By the Hulk, kicked into a tree.
And
they say every bone in his body is shattered.
Broken, and then within a week he's back on his feet. So maybe Banner, before he even as Banner form, not in the Hulk, he's like that. You can just beat him up.
Yeah, I'm
good again.
I'm not saying the Hulk is the Hulk is obviously near invincible. I'm saying Banner is
exactly.
invincible.
Banner himself, which is interesting.
Going back to comic references that kind of back this up, in Old Man Logan, you see old Hulk who has a bunch of a family of Hulk people, and
that's disturbing.
He is still Hulk, he's Hulk full time, but he's still Hulk shape. Mm-hmm. So I don't think his cells deteriorate in any form he's in. I don't think they deteriorate.
Interesting.
I think the gamma rays made them his cells solid.
Now, how do you think this is going to play into Civil War?
He's not in Civil War.
Well, I know, but he's in the MCU, and I'm sure his path of destruction is a huge part. General Ross is in the movie, and he personally wants to hunt him. How do you think this is going to play?
Well, in Thor Ragnarok, because I'm going to ignore your question altogether. In Thor Ragnarok, he's supposed to show up in Thor Ragnarok and fight gods, I guess, which makes sense because going back to the whole invincible thing, they're somewhat invincible.
Right.
So that would kind of make
Except
sense.
for the pillars, they seem to take a lot of damage from.
Well, they're not good construction workers.
They're incredible people. But
Why would they be? Why would they be good at construction?
I don't know.
They can fly.
Yeah, that's true. Well, do you think all Asgardians can fly?
Let's say yes.
Maybe.
Also, none of them except
Actually,
for
Thor doesn't fly. He
them,
just throws his hammer.
None of them can except for Thor, and even Thor can't fly.
Yeah, he just never lets go of his hammer. He just pulls him.
Speaking of Thor, so
my boy,
we learn in Thor that not only are all the things that happen in Norse mythology true, but also that those things have been happening in tandem to our regular world, which implies that Thor, because you said they lived for 5,000 years or something like that.
Something like that. There was that conversation in Dark World where they say the age.
So Norse mythology takes place around that ish time. So
they were teenagers.
He's a teenager when he started doing
all those Norse stories.
Yeah, all those Norse stories about Thor's greatness and he fights the
15.
He's the equivalent of a kid at that point.
Should we explain how Asgardian aging works though?
Sure.
Basically, in the comics, there's this tree that bears fruit, and Asgardians age the normal rate of humans, and then when they turn 18, they come of age, they eat the apple or whatever fruit it is, and it slows down their aging.
Specifically an apple.
It might be. I don't know.
It's just a regular apple.
It's some golden fruit. I don't know.
It's Granny Smith.
Granny Smith, yes. And it slows down their aging so that they stay in their prime for as long as they can, and even when they're older, that stretches out longer. So.
Yeah. So realistically, he can live longer than any other human.
Right.
But also again, from his perspective of his whole age length, he was a kid when he was doing all those
which explains
amazing
why he's
fantasies.
so cocky.
Yeah.
I'm the best.
He's been literally the thing of legends since he was a kid.
Yeah, of course.
Also, going to that same humans are sort of insignificant in their lifespan compared to him. Jane Foster is a weird relationship for him.
Oh yeah, very weird.
Because he was a full-grown man and will die and will be a full-grown man for her entire lifespan.
Right. She's gonna be old, and he's still gonna look 30 at most, 40 at most, and she's gonna be like in her 80s if she lives that long.
It's gonna be the same like Steve Rogers thing where like he sees her being Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then she's almost like the equivalent of a pet in that
regard.
Right,
yeah.
Because pets also live like a short amount of our lives.
We see them.
Speaking of pets and old people and great segues, next we're gonna talk about Captain America.
Woo!
This is sort of gonna be the meatier part of the. So there's a lot of talk about Captain America and Iron Man, obviously, in Civil War.
What?
One of the things you might not know about Captain America is he's a terrible person. Not a terrible person, but he's not a great person.
Right. He can't exist outside of a war.
Yeah, he's kind of a warmonger.
Mongler?
Mongler. I don't see how we're saying it differently.
All right.
He's a warmonger. And Captain America's kind of like a warmonger.
Right.
He can't live without it. There's that scene in Age of Ultron, obviously, where he talks about like Captain America.
All the nightmare sequences.
But right. And also that kind of speaks to it, where his greatest fear that Scarlet Witch can show him isn't like everyone dying. It isn't like some apocalypse like Thor. It isn't his worst memory. Mm-hmm. It's the idea that he could go back and be normal and have the war end.
Yeah.
Like the war ends, he can go home.
Yeah, that's his biggest fear. There's nothing to do. And it's interesting, we were talking about worthiness with Black Widow, and we talked about Thor a little bit, and we're saying that's the reason why the hammer kind of tilted for him.
Right.
And he was able to pick it up because he's just like Thor at the beginning of the first Thor movie, where he's very kind of cocky. He can't live without a war, and that's how Thor is. Like, Odin's like, you need to learn the meaning of peace before you can be a king. And that's kind of, Captain America suffers the same thing. He doesn't know how to live in a time of peace. He only knows how to exist in a time of war.
Right. Great person, totally virtuous, can't live without war. Right. And that's, Mjolnir can't accept that. There's also the scene from Age of Ultron where Ultron's talking to him and he's like, oh, Captain America, the greatest soldier, pretending you can live without war.
Right.
Even at the end of Age of Ultron, he's at the Avengers facility and he's looking out and it's like, oh, yeah, I'm home. Like, this is my home. It's a campground where we're training soldiers to fight in a war. When we see Captain America in Avengers for the first time, he's boxing in a gym.
Yeah,
literally just waiting for an assignment. Nick Fury shows up and he's like, yo, you're an assignment? And he's like, I'm trying to reintroduce you into the world. And it's like, he can't do that.
Yeah.
He's too far away from that whole world. Once he gets back into the world and he's like, Avengers is over, they all ride into the sunset, they all go their separate ways. Captain America immediately enlists into S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And then you see him at the Lemurian Star. He like consumes himself entirely in war tactics and like what to do.
And even like a big part of like his internal conflict in Winter Soldier is he's like, should I get out? When he's talking to Falcon, he's like, I don't know. He's like, the only reason I stayed in S.H.I.E.L.D. was because of Peggy. And he's like, he doesn't know how to quit, but he wants to.
Well, yeah, he's talking to Peggy and he's like
it's like an addiction almost. Like someone's like, this drug is ruining my life, but I need it. And that's him with war.
It's also kind of an interesting commentary on like, I guess, war in general, because where he comes from, obviously in the 40s, we had this sort of like clear conflict of who was right and who was wrong.
Right.
Obviously the Nazis are bad guys and the Allies were good guys. But he doesn't have that scenario anymore.
Right.
Wars are very gray nowadays.
Yeah, it's like you do what we tell you to do because we tell you to do it.
Right.
Not because this man's evil.
You follow orders.
Yeah.
And that's a big, I've heard it's a big conflict in Civil War, is that he doesn't want to be told who the bad guy is. Like, he knows who bad guys are and like the people that are bad.
That, one spot that they released, and it was basically like showing their ideologies. Then the one for Cap was essentially that. He's like, you know, the UN, they're politicians, they have agendas, and agendas change. And he basically has that quote where he's like, the safest hands are our own, and if we need to be somewhere, and they don't want us to be there, that's just as bad. And also, if they send us somewhere where we don't need to be, that's bad too.
Right. If the government controls superheroes, they get to decide who the supervillains are.
Exactly.
Which is kind of a good point.
That's basically the conflict that was going on in Winter Soldier. You know, like, oh, we're hijacking our own boat. You know, like that sort of stuff.
But yeah, he's kind of a warmonger. He's a warmong. We're gonna get to the last one. This is probably the saddest of all of them. So I'm gonna run straight through Tony Stark's past, leading up to the saddest moments. We start in about 1960s, 1950s, sometime. Tony Stark's a little kid. He has parents. His mom's somewhere. Who knows? Who knows if he even knows who his mom is? I guess.
Maria Stark.
Right, but we're not introduced to her in the movies at all. We know Howard Stark is a businessman who has absolutely no time for his kid. We see that in Iron Man 2 when he has the reels.
Making probably Walt Disney-esque theme parks.
Right. The only company that he has is Jarvis, who's his butler. We see it in Agent Carter.
Right.
He's a befuddled British man who follows every order that Howard Stark does.
Right.
Presumably, as a child, he is raised majorly by Jarvis, who is Howard Stark says, "Hey, take care of my kid for me." He goes off. Jarvis watches over the kid.
That also makes sense too with Jarvis and his wife not being able to have kids.
Right.
How they would adopt Tony as their own child.
Yeah, and in season 2 of Agent Carter, you learn that through an accident, Jarvis's wife can't have kids, so they sort of pseudo-adopt Tony as a kid. Then in Winter Soldier, we learn that the Winter Soldier is actually responsible for assassinating Howard Stark.
Right.
Presumably, Howard Stark wouldn't have been driving himself. He'd be driven by Jarvis as a butler.
Right.
So Winter Soldier probably kills Jarvis and Tony Stark's parents at the same time.
So he just loses everything.
He loses his father, his mother, and his pseudo-father all at the same time.
Right.
He probably has a friend, Rhodey, but Rhodey is also a soldier, so he has to be deployed overseas. He's ranking up to colonel sometimes. He's home alone with, he's abandoned his, we learn in Iron Man 1, he kind of left the company and, returned years later.
Right, because he went off to MIT, at a very young age.
Here's my theory. During that whole time that he left the company and after his parents were murdered by the Winter Soldier, he, in the glow of the computer that he's sitting in front of, total sadness over his, loss of all the life, he decides to rigorously program an artificial intelligence unit to mimic his fallen father figure, Jarvis. Jarvis doesn't actually stand for anything substantial. It's
just a random something, I don't remember.
Just a really very intelligent system.
Yeah.
It's that is the logic of someone asking, "Oh, what does Jarvis stand for?" And he goes, "Just a really very intelligent system."
Tony.
This is a man who is so sad that his life is, all his friends are gone, that he builds a friend for himself.
Yeah.
I've programmed before, and it takes a long time to run a small program, just a choose your own adventure game, a text-based choose your own adventure game. That takes days, hours. Programming a fully functioning artificial intelligent British system, that is dedication beyond all. You can't do anything else while you're doing that. He also makes the AI British. Mm-hmm. He also makes the AI very cool and snarky, which is what a kid would think that guy sounds like when he's an adult, because he never got old with that guy and learned that he was just a human. So in his mind, Jarvis is just a really very intelligent system that's very snarky and very cool and very quippy.
It's really cool though, because it gives a nice insight into the mind of Tony Stark and the reason, especially in Age of Ultron, why he's so devastated when Ultron destroys Jarvis.
Yeah.
And he's just no, we need to kill him now.
I think that would have been a really cool scene in Age of Ultron where you see Tony Stark losing it because his best friend that he built himself is gone. Yeah. But I guess he has new friends now.
I guess, but even then, he was still pretty devastated by that.
Yeah.
And then
he gets his friend back in Vision, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
Tony Stark has a sad life.
Really sad life. That's why he's an alcoholic.
Tell us what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe. All that stuff. Tell us if you're team Captain America or Team Iron Man. I'm Team Iron Man.
And I'm Team Captain America.
This has been Robert.
This is Matt.
And we're a Legion of Nerd.
Woo!